Hello everyone, welcome to the Scumdog's Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and in today's Cryptid Corner mini episode, today I have several paranormal stories to read to you today, folks. Phenomenal stories that are going to basically leave you with something to think about. Let's get into the first article, titled Invisible Footsteps Observed in Allegheny National Forest, Pennsylvania. Campfire encounter with an unseen forest entity. Let's get into this account now and read exactly what the experiencers lived through. In 2009, during a rainbow gathering in Pennsylvania's Allegheny National Forest, two women camped away from the main group experienced something neither of them could explain. At dusk, they heard a distinct footsteps moving through the leaves, watched the ground react to each step, yet saw no visible source at all. And probably were completely frightened by the entire encounter, folks. Let's read on and hear the full account and what the story actually details from the witness's own testimony. Something happened to a friend at a rainbow gathering in 2009 in Pennsylvania's Allegheny National Forest and me. It was before most of the people had arrived, and we were camped off by ourselves, away from everyone else. We were set up along the main trail that runs from the parking area and down a steep hill into the large clearing where the gathering was centered. It was dusk, and the light was dropping fast. We had a fire going, and were sitting there having one of those deep conversations about life and spirituality. After a while, we decided to head down the trail to the clearing to look for food. Just as we stood up, a few people who had been walking up the trail stopped about 30 yards below us to rest. Then my friend Anna said, "Hey, do you hear that?" I listened and could clearly hear someone walking in the woods to our left. The problem was that no one should have been coming from that direction. We were well away from the main clearing, and all the lights and activity were in the opposite direction. That alone would frighten most people, folks. But could it be just a person, folks? It's been said that basically people live in Yellowstone National Park, folks, that they live in the forest. Could this be an example of such a person living in the woods, folks? Or maybe an example of a Native American man on a kind of walkabout trip, folks? Because it's been said that basically some encounters with Bigfoot are actually just encounters with Native American shamans or Native Americans on a kind of spiritual walkabout. They let their hair grow out long, and sometimes they're mistaken for Bigfoot. Could this be such a case here, folks? I have my doubts, but it would be a reasonable explanation. But let's read on. The footsteps were coming from below us and to the left, moving straight toward the people on the trail. I looked directly at the spot where the sound should have matched a person walking, but there was nothing there. Still, I could see leaves being kicked up where the steps were landing. Something was moving through the woods, but I could not see anything making those sounds. Wherever it was, reached the people on the trail while they were talking among themselves. None of them reacted. None of them seemed to notice a thing, but I could hear the steps slow down as it passed them, almost as if it turned its attention toward them for a moment, checking them out. Then it started coming directly toward Anna and me. This is the point that I think most people would run away, folks. They couldn't see whatever was making that sound, folks, but it was clearly walking. It didn't look like it was actually trying to hide itself beyond basically just being invisible. So clearly, most people would think they would see something, but no, they couldn't. Both Anna and the experiencer just could not see anything. Either way, let's now continue. Anna was fumbling with her keychain, trying to get to a small flashlight. Whatever was making those steps came right up to the other side of her fire pit and never hesitated. It approached slowly, and when Anna finally turned on the light and shouted, "Hey!" it reacted instantly. It shot uphill past me at incredible speed, kicking up leaves and dirt as it went. I still get goosebumps thinking about it. The whole time, it sounded like an invisible child, power walking, short, quick steps, almost like a tiny machine gun rhythm through the leaves. When it rushed past me, it still had that same fast, compact stride. There was no way I could have chased it. It was unbelievably fast. We both ran down the hill and got out of there. This really happened. I never felt like it was a ghost. It did not feel human to me. For some reason, I always leaned toward the idea of fairies or leprechauns more than anything. I had the very distinct impression that this little invisible being did not realize it was being noticed. Yet, someone, particularly Anna and the experiencer, heard this being, folks. It probably thought if you could basically say these kinds of entities do think at all, folks, that it was safe, if it could reason like a human, folks, just because it was invisible. But clearly it didn't take into account that people could hear it moving through the woods. At least that's the impression I get here as well, folks, as I try to understand what this being was maybe thinking, that no one could possibly notice it was there, but people were able to at least hear it. Very interesting story, folks, but let's move on to the next article titled Circleville, Ohio. Campers encounter Phantom Railroad River Woman and Towering Shadow Entity. Let's get into this account now and hear exactly what was experienced as well. In mid-January 2014, a group of friends camping outside Circleville, Ohio, set out to find an abandoned mining settlement said to lie several miles from their camp. What began as a winter hike along old railroad tracks quickly turned into a layered high strangeness event involving missing landmarks, a bizarre woman in an icy river, shared dreams, disembodied laughter, shadow forms, and a towering entity that delivered a chilling message. Let's read on and hear exactly what the experiencers basically had to live through, folks. Let's get into it now. Michael told me that in mid-January 2014, he and several friends went winter camping in the woods outside Circleville, Ohio. It was his first time camping, and despite the cold, he wanted the experience. During the first night, some of the group talked about an abandoned, overgrown mining town about 3 miles from camp. The place was supposedly haunted and was also called Circleville. They decided they would hike out the next morning and try to find it. The next day, they drove to the trail entrance and began hiking. They crossed a small river by using a large fallen tree as a bridge, then moved through the woods until they reached old railroad tracks that were no longer in service. They had been told that if they followed the tracks for 3 miles, they would arrive at the old town. After walking much longer than expected, they began to think they had somehow passed it without realizing it, so they turned around. While heading back, they heard a train whistle in the distance. The strange part was that it never seemed to get any closer. It remained fixed at what felt like the same distance the entire time. Wow. That is incredibly spooky, folks, and downright terrifying. I imagine the story is going to get even better than that, so let's read on. When they returned to the river, they were stunned to discover that the heavy log they had used earlier to cross was gone. Unable to explain it, they followed the waterway until they found a narrower stretch along the way. They saw an elderly woman floating or swimming down the freezing river, dressed in what looked like an old-style bathing suit. Michael said all 5 of them found the sight deeply unsettling. She appeared human, but there was something wrong about her presence. He remembered a scar on her chest and a mole on her face. Looking back, he came to believe she may have been some kind of forest witch or anomalous apparition rather than an ordinary person. Back at camp, the group continued talking about the woman. That night, every one of them dreamed about a sign that read, "Half mile to Circleville." The next day, they began hearing a woman giggling in the woods, even though no one else was nearby. Some of Michael's friends also reported seeing shadows moving at the edge of their vision. All of them felt as if they were being watched. That night, Michael chose to sleep in the back seat of his car because of the cold. He woke twice when he felt the vehicle shaking. The second time, he saw 5 figures surrounding the car. At first, he thought they were his friends, but he quickly realized they were not. He described them as black, vaguely human, amorphous forms. One was bent over the hood, looking in, while the others stood around the sides. The car door suddenly flew open, and he was thrown onto the ground. He then watched as 4 of the figures somehow merged into the one near the hood, forming a single entity about 7 feet tall with glowing eyes and a defined face. This, if true, folks, is completely horrifying. It sounds like it came from a nightmare. Maybe this guy woke up later on thinking it was a dream, but if this entirely happened while he was awake, then wow, this is an encounter that basically really stands on its own and out as something truly phenomenal. Either way, let's get back to it and hear exactly where this, account will go next. The being crouched down and looked directly into his eyes. Then it spoke a single sentence: "You are so close." After that, it stood, moved back, and gradually faded into the darkness. Michael remained terrified and spent the rest of the night awake in the car. The next morning, the group compared experiences and realized they had all had encountered elements of the same phenomena: shared dreams, shadows, sounds, and the overpowering feeling of surveillance. They decided to leave immediately. As they were heading out, Michael saw the same large entity standing in the tree line, watching them depart. One of the friends still has nightmares about the old woman in the river and does not like to discuss the event. Michael later came to believe that the group may have crossed into another reality while walking the tracks, perhaps entering a dimensional overlap connected to the old town. In his view, The unmoving train whistle, the missing log, the strange woman, the shared dream, and the final encounter with the entity may have all been part of the same environmental shift. He believes the word "you are so close" may have referred either to the lost Circleville itself or to something else they were nearing without understanding it. And perhaps they would never be able to return from it, folks. Is this another account with basically the fair folk? It has elements of another story that reminds me of the ultra-terrestrial phenomena as well, folks, in which these two friends, two girls, I think maybe three at most, folks, were walking up a mountain, and they said that they crossed an invisible wall, at least the feeling I get, folks, and they said they saw the most breathtaking view of this mountain, and they knew, at least on some level, if they continued trekking up the mountain, they would be unable to return home, folks. You hear this sort of story before, folks, from other people who have had similar encounters. One man basically seen a field, in the woods, they says was the most magnificent sight he'd ever seen before, folks. And he says that if he had basically gotten out and walked it, he feels like he would have entered another world. In fact, he wrote or basically made a poem or story about it later on. They basically shared with the public. Either way, a phenomenally bizarre story, folks. It makes you wonder exactly what's really out there. Could both stories detail encounters with ultra-terrestrial beings, folks? Does that mean that such entities do exist? Are they actual beings from mythology, folks? Or are those just names we have given these kinds of entities? Could elves and fairies be real? Or are they just names we've given to alien beings like the Greys or the Pleiadians? Because if you look at basically modern UFO lore, folks, the Grey aliens sound very reminiscent of goblins and ghouls, while the Pleiadians look distinctly like Tolkien's elves with long blonde hair and, piercing blue eyes. And you get the same feeling that you get when you look at Galadriel from Lord of the Rings. I mean, if you look at old legends from Ireland, folks, they mentioned that the fairies came here on ships and that when they got here, they burned the ships so they couldn't return home. At least, if you believe the lore, folks. I've heard similar stories to this, folks. Now, you could wonder, what kind of ships were these that were burned? Were they actual sailing ships, or were they ships from beyond the stars? Because if you look at other cryptoterrestrial lore, folks, it's mentioned that ultra-terrestrials, or cryptoterrestrials, as are also known, folks, it's been said maybe they came here from outer space and they've been here so long that, they might as well be natives, but they've been here longer than us is the real idea here, folks. Could that be the truth of the matter? We simply don't know. All we can do is really just wonder about all of it. Is it all related, or are there other things that we have to consider as well, folks? I mean, if you look at the first story, folks, Anna and the experiencer, they heard something. They couldn't hear it, and it looked like this entity was distinctly intelligent. Could it have been a ghost? Like the way they said this old woman could have been a mountain witch or a spirit? Possibly. Maybe ultra-terrestrials and fairies and ghosts, maybe they can, interact with each other because they can both, enter the next world. It's been said that basically these entities can travel around, zip around. Maybe it's because they can enter the next world, even though they are, fundamentally alive, folks, maybe immortal, but they can enter this world and zip around. It's been the same thought that perhaps UFOs use the same power to basically travel the stars, that they're able to somehow travel into the next world and zip through it like a shortcut between, here and there. As I said, folks, if that's true, when we basically think we're looking up the stars, folks, maybe we're looking at basically more than just the stars itself. Maybe we're looking at pathways carved through heaven and hell that allows people, fairies, or alien entities to travel the universe. And maybe even beyond it, folks. That's just an idea there. Either way, it's fundamentally all very interesting. But do you believe it, folks? I say that there's distinctly something out there, folks. I think it's both human and non, and I think that it can look human to us. But what I'm really trying to say here, folks, I think they are related to us humans as well. Either way, very interesting stories, folks, but we're now at the end, so please go subscribe to my YouTube channel, Read Comics They're Bad For You. You can use the YouTube link down below in descriptions of the chat to go subscribe to me. Hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure at the part of the bell they'll give you all future notifications, and please share this video out. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back again tomorrow with another great video, so be sure to come back again then. Until next time, folks, I'll see you all again soon.